I noticed recently that Avon have changed their design of their Far Away perfumes, which I tend to think is a little bit of a shame because I kind of like the vintagey look, the boudoir dresser look of the older perfumes. But I wanted to try these out because what I have here is one of the older versions in the frosted bottles, which I don't think this is like one of the absolutely oldest versions, but this is kind of the classic version of Far Away with a lovely frosted bottle and the two different colours on the lid. And it comes in a box that has this on the front and then a little tassel design. Then this one in the middle is from when they changed this bottle to keep a very similar shape. But they lost the frosted glass and it was just clear glass, and then the lid was entirely pink. So I did have that one for a while, and then I gave that one away because I got an older version on eBay. But this is the pen spray of that kind of the in-between, So this is the one with the plain pink lid. And as you can see, I wore quite a lot of this one. And then this is the new Far Away. So let's take this out of the box. I actually think these are really nice, these new bottles, but it is kind of losing a little bit of its vintage charm because this perfume to me does smell a bit vintage. But this is the new bottle. As you can see, it's quite a different shape. It's still got a round lid, but this is the original Far Away and this is the gold one. So yeah, they've really kind of modernized how this perfume looks. But when they do this, they do tend to also change how a perfume smells. So I thought it'd be, interesting to test these out. I've got all of these on my skin today, so I'm gonna just talk you through what they've kind of changed, because they have changed it definitely. So this is it's what they used to call an oriental perfume. I guess you would describe it as being slightly exotic because it has things like coconut and ylang ylang, it's got some of those more interesting floral and fruity notes in it. But it also is a kind of slightly peachy, slightly syrupy vanilla perfume. It has a decent amount of amber in it, but it's not horrifically ambery. I do also really like Chopard Casimir, which is a great perfume that I think is quite similar to Far Away. And that one's a little bit more ambery and there's a touch of patchouli in it, so it's got a even more vintage feel to it, but perfume-wise very similar. And that one's probably even slightly more vanillic in the deep dry down. So the notes are Far Away, and they've never actually said that they've changed the notes specifically, so I'll read the original notes. It's coconut, ylang ylang, peach, caro corunde and orange in the top. Mid notes are jasmine, gardenia, violet, freesia, osmanthus and rose. Base notes are vanilla, sandalwood, amber and musk. And I think of Far Away as being a kind of slightly plasticky ylang ylang and peachy vanilla. So, and it's not, because I don't really like peach generally in perfumes. I often find it a bit sickly, but it's really nicely blended in with this perfume. It's really, really pretty. I was just checking on what Caro Corunde is, and it says that it's an intensely floral, sweet, intoxicating fragrance similar to jasmine with a peculiar almond nuance. And I can kind of see that because there is a hint of that slightly, what some people will call like a Play-Doh vanilla. And I think of like a marzipan-y vanilla. So if you know Hypnotic Poison, for instance, from Dior, that's a really famously marzipan-y vanilla that a lot of people think smells like Play-Doh. I get that same thing here. I do get something plasticky from Far Away. I always have, and I like that about it. I actually had a bottle of Far Away when it very, very first came out in the 90s. And I was really happy maybe a year or two ago when I got this version. And I was like, oh no, I really like this smell. There's something very intoxicating about it. But sometimes it's just a bit too chemically for me. And then it depends what time of the month it is. And then other times I just find it absolutely addictive. So it has a warmth, it has almost a slightly cinnamony spiciness to it to me, this. but it is quite vanillic, and I'd say Ylang Ylang is the most obvious floral. It also has some overlap with Ylang in Gold by M. Micallef, which, I mean, I think that Ylang in Gold smells like a not as creamy sweet version of Chopard's Casimir. So I think that like those two are really similar, and Casimir is similar to Far Away, and therefore they're all kind of somewhere in the same region. So I love this one. I think it's rich. I think it's pretty. It's got decent lasting power. I'd say this one on my skin will last for maybe 5 hours. It's supposed to be an eau de parfum. It's really not bad. But, you know, it's a very affordable perfume. I think this one full price back in the day probably would have been like £10, if that. This version is slightly different. So once they put it in the non-frosted bottle with the pink lid, and I'll put a little picture up to represent. So what I found with this version, I feel like it's incredibly similar to this, but it definitely smells a little bit more chemically. It doesn't smell quite as rich, but it has retained the yummy vanilla that's in this one. The pink version that you'll be hopefully seeing here, it just smells a little bit cheaper, not quite as rich, not quite as smooth. It's a little bit more spiky, and I'd say this is already a perfume that is slightly spiky especially when you first spray it. But I've got these on my skin now, and the deep dry down of this is still rich. It's quite vanillic. It's got a little bit of a smooth creaminess to it. And then a noticeable kind of slightly ylang-y floral. The fruits have died down a bit. On my arm where I sprayed this one, it's definitely not as strong, and I sprayed these all at the same time. So I've been wearing these for around about, I'd say about 3.5, 4 hours. And the pink lidded version definitely has a little bit more of a sort of scratchy, slightly more chemically scent, rather than the kind of slightly smooth plasticky scent that I get with the original. It's a little bit more harsh smelling, I think is what I'm trying to say, but it has still got that lovely vanilla. It is still pretty much this. It just smells like a slightly cheaper version of this. I think that's what I'm getting from this one compared to this. So when I sprayed this one, I was like, oh, they've definitely changed this. So the new version of Far Away is definitely thinner and sheerer. Of course, this is also newer. It might get a bit richer as it dries, as it ages, I should say. You can see it's also like a paler colour than we've got here, and in here as well it's slightly paler, but it might just need to age up a little bit. What I did think with this one though is that it felt much sheerer straight away, and therefore a little bit more modern. It felt a little bit fruitier, and not as strong. Yeah, and from the actual sprayer, it does still very much smell like Far Away, but this one I feel has even more of a slightly chemically smell that I'm not loving. And on my skin, I started to get something, the more it dried down, that, how to say it, this sounds weird, ever so slightly oniony. That's a weird thing to say, I know. But there was something a little bit off-putting and slightly acrid in the new version of Far Away that I definitely don't get in this one, and I only get a little hint of in this pink version. So I was already thinking, well, I don't love this one as much. I definitely don't think it's as good. It has definitely lost a bit of the richness from these. And on my skin now, it's extremely faint, so it's definitely also not as strong. Now, as I said, it might just mean that needs a little bit longer to develop. You might need to put it in a cupboard after you sprayed it, let it age up a bit, let it mature. But I just think this new version is the most chemically smelling of any of these. And it's the thing that I think is a bit even more of a bummer is it doesn't have the same kind of creamy vanilla in the dry down. Not at the moment anyway. So it doesn't have that kind of nice, smooth, slightly tropical smelling, you know, vanillic feel when it dries down. It's almost a little bit more floral, I would say. So yeah, I don't love the new version, but it's not like such a jump that it's absolutely butchered, I have to say. And I do think that, you know, if you leave it for a little while and see how it develops, it might not be a disaster. But what I'll say is a lot of the places that sell this, so for instance, I imagine that the Avon, they're selling the new version. But Superdrug, when I went in there, they have the old version. So not this one, but they have this pink one. They have this. So you can still buy the kind of in-between one. And the same with some sellers on eBay, they still got the one with the pink lid. And in fact, on eBay, you still can get the frosted bottles. But you'll be able to tell before you even open a box, if you don't want this new one, this is what the boxes look like. And the old boxes, again, I will put up a picture so you can see what this version looks like in the box. But yeah, so I mean, I would say if you can afford it, and then because they're not really selling them for huge amounts of money, I think this one was about £12. If you can get the frosted version from eBay from someone who's taken care of it, this is definitely the nicest version. And the pink lidded version that's in this sprayer, that is the second best version. And if you can't get any of those, then, you know, this is still nice. It's just not as nice. So they've definitely changed it. It's not the same, but it's not completely butchered and ruined. I don't think it reacts so well on my skin. On card, I wasn't getting that slightly oniony smell that I was getting from the new Far Away. But I imagine it's an aroma chemical, and I'm very sensitive to the new modern aroma chemicals. I cannot smell the kind of tarry, like the burnt rubber and burnt wood aroma chemical that I get in in fact, all of the other Far Aways that I've ever smelt. They all have that tarry aroma chemical in that I can't stand. So they haven't added that into the original Far Away, which is very good news. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you can still get the pink lidded version. And if you want just something easy, that's the one to go for. If you're willing to take a chance and get an old bottle, this is just the richest, this is the smoothest. This is definitely the winner, I think. Okay. I hope that was helpful, guys. Let me know if you've tried this new one and if you've had any issues with it or whether you can't smell any difference. And I hope this was helpful. Thanks very much for watching. Bye, guys.